All right, I think I'm okay to go. Good evening, everyone. I hope you're feeling well. So just a quick introduction. My name is Christopher Andrews, consulting to Neolife to talk about the products and also work on special projects. And this month we're talking about joint mobility, joint health, strength and agility. So I've got my little presentation I'm going to walk through. There's a few slides that I'd like to go through this evening, and then I'll explain the agenda. So just bear with me. Uh, so as I mentioned, tonight's topic is on strength and agility, nutritional support for bones and joints. And don't we all love our knees when they're working properly, and shoulders and any other joint? So the agenda items for this evening. We'll begin by understanding the fundamentals of joint health and aging, followed by a look at the key joint health conditions, and then we will go into the key nutrition and lifestyle interventions that you can use that will promote joint health. And then finally, we're going to review some of the anti-inflammatory diet and key nutrients that support joint health, with a special focus on some of the products from Neolife. So, understanding bone, joint and health and aging, key joint health conditions, nutrition and lifestyle interventions, particularly look at the anti-inflammatory diet, foods and nutrients, and then the key nutrients. So, let's talk about understanding joint health and aging. Comfortable movement is something that we often take for granted, especially when we're younger. But as we get older, we realize just how much our happiness rests on our knees, shoulders, and other joints. I think anyone who's had a sore knee or achy knee or just getting older and waking up in the morning and feeling a little bit stiffer know exactly what I'm talking about. So how do we keep our joints healthy? It comes down to a healthy lifestyle, of course, with nutrients and nutritional supplementation being key that helps support healthy cartilage, encourage comfortable movement, and promote healthy anti-inflammatory response. So we're not talking about, decreasing all inflammation, because some inflammation is good. In fact, inflammation is required by the body, but it's the uncontrolled overproduction of inflammatory compounds in the body that will affect your joint health and movement. So let's look at some of the age-related changes in connective tissue. So as we age, our joints undergo wear and tear, which can lead to discomfort and mobility issues. So understanding how aging affects joint health is vital for implementing effective strategies for maintaining your joint function. So in particular, we're going to take a look at the bone, the cartilage, the synovial fluid, which is the fluid in between the bones inside the synovial capsule. And also, of course, I think everyone knows about this, collagen. And there's a lot of talk about collagen out in the general marketplace these days. So let's start off by looking at changes in connective tissue as a collective. We're talking about changes in circulating hormonal factors, and these include things like hormones, cytokines, growth factors. So changes in the connective tissue biology with aging, resulting in a decrease in the effective maintenance of these tissue, what we call tissue homeostasis, which results in alterations in circulating humoral factors, hormones, cytokines, growth factors, built-in cellular senescence, which is a loss of a cell's power to divide and grow properly, especially when compared to younger cells. And this results in a slower turnover of many of the connective tissue in cells. So one thing that happens when we get older is that the cells still turn over, but they turn over at a much slower rate. And what that results in is that those cells are more aged, they are less flexible, and that results in the loss in that movement. Then there's also age-related alterations in the matrix molecules cross-linking and a buildup of waste products. And some of these products are compounds such as lipofusion, and also compounds that I've got here as called AGEs, or advanced glycation end products. And basically that's just a situation that occurs as we get older. We get increased production of these age compounds, age-related glycation end products, which basically is just a cross-linking of the proteins associated with aging. The bottom line is that You do not want to have too much of this age production going on. So the less you can have of those, the better. And that's where the anti-inflammatory nutrients from fruits and vegetables, carotenoids, flavonoids, cruciferous compounds, anti-inflammatory fatty acids such as omega-3s will come in beneficial. Now, if we look at the bone specifically, bone is a dynamic organ. It is an organ. It doesn't. You probably don't think of it as an organ, but it is an organ. It does also produce certain nutrients in the body. It's a dynamic organ that serves mechanical and homeostatic functions. It undergoes continual self regeneration, a process called remodeling. So basically, you're removing old bone tissue and replacing it with new bone tissue. Bone formation and bone resorption is coupled tightly in a balance to maintain bone mass and strength. And of course, as we get older, you may realize that our bone strength and mass declines with age. And so that rate of resorption or breakdown can start to exceed the rate of bone formation. And this results in a lower, what we call lower bone mass or low bone mass density, resulting in bones weakening. So some factors that affect this include genetics. So unfortunately, we can't control our genes, but so family history. So if you've got a family history of osteoporosis, what we call your peak bone mass, which is what is accrued in your youth. So as you're younger, if you can do everything you can to maintain your bone mass, so that's a good healthy diet and regular physical activity that will give you your best chance at building your peak bone mass. Alterations in the cellular components. So basically, just as I mentioned before, bone resorption and bone modeling. As we get older, so persons over 50 years of age are obviously at increased risk of weaker bones and lower bone density. What we call comorbid medical conditions such as hypothyroidism and hyperthyroidism, hormonal, biochemical, and vasculature changes can also lead to a reduced bone density. A symptom or syndrome, I guess you could say, known as sarcopenia, and I'll talk about sarcopenia in more detail in a moment, but sarcopenia is a loss of your muscle mass. And muscle is important because muscle actually pulls on your bone tissue, helps stimulate your bone density. So bone sarcopenia and osteo or bone mass density go hand in hand. So things that you can control here is going to be your nutrition, your nutrient intake, insufficient calcium intake, insufficient protein intake, and insufficient vitamin D intake are just three, I guess, particular areas to focus on, making sure that you get, what we should say, an optimal intake of calcium, protein, and vitamin D. And I can talk about those nutrients a little bit later on. If you're underweight, so if you have a BMI, which is a body mass index of less than 18.5, and if you're not too sure what BMI is, it's basically just indication of your weight against your height. So a low BMI can increase your risk for low bone mass density. But having said that, being too overweight can also increase your risk of osteoarthritis. So it's you need to be right in that optimal range, a healthy BMI range, which is normally between 18.5 and around 25. Physical activity is critically important throughout your lifespan, from a young age right through into your senior years. So the more physical activity you can do, the greater stimulation of the bone tissue, the greater chance you're going to have of maintaining your bone tissue overall. And of course, certain medications and drugs such as alcohol and smoking can also affect your bone density. So, minimizing, if not eliminating, alcohol intake, and certainly eliminating smoke or an exposure to smoke. So the combination of bone mass deficiency and reduction in strength has a direct effect on joint mobility, reducing the joint surfaces to also the joint mechanics. Ultimately, these changes can result in osteoporosis and insufficiency, what we call insufficiency fractures. So basically, You are doing an activity, and some people you may have heard, or you may have had a relative who loses their balances and falls over. Sometimes it may be that they actually fall over because their bones are just so weak and they have these insufficiency fractures. And of course, that can result, if they have a significant fall, to something more serious, such as a significantly broken bone, whether it be in the hip, or in the your collarbone, clavicle region as well, or your wrist as well. They're probably the three main areas that can affect with osteoporosis. So let's look at changes in cartilage. So with aging, joint movements become stiffer and less flexible because of the amount of synovial fluid inside what we call the synovial joints decreases, and the cartilage becomes thinner. So it's not great news on that front. Ligaments also tend to shorten and lose some of their flexibility as we get older, making joints feel stiffer, especially when you wake up first thing in the morning. Age in the cartilage is likely due to aging changes in cells and tissues that make the joint more susceptible to damage and less able to maintain what we call homeostasis, or just maintenance of good, healthy regulation of the body tissues. So that is imbalances between a catabolic and anabolic activity driven by local production of what we call inflammatory mediators in cartilage and surrounding tissue. There's a close relationship between what we call the chondrocyte activity and local articular environment, uh, which can result in changes to cell senescence followed by secretion of the inflammatory mediators. Oops, sorry, just gone too far. Oxidative stress also plays a major role in this. So consuming a diet rich in antioxidants and taking supplements that help support that through antioxidant network is going to be quite critical as well. So things like vitamin C, vitamin E, your flavonoids, your carotenoid compounds are all antioxidant type nutrients. And then we have changes in synovial fluid. So this is the fluid inside the joint tissue itself. So synovial fluid is what lubricates the joints for smooth movement. You may have heard of a compound called hyaluronic acid. And when you're younger, the hyaluronic acid is actually quite dense and thick. It's like a syrup. And it helps provide that lubrication and also cushioning to the joint tissue itself. But as we get older, that hyaluronic acid changes slightly in its density, and it decreases its ability to inhibit the it decreases its ability to absorbing the impact that we have through cushioning and lubrication. And then we have changes in collagen. So collagen is a protein that is a connective tissue found throughout the body. You can see in the diagram here. Most people have heard that it's found in nail, in bone, in hair, skin, in the derma of the skin, connective tissue of the skin. But in particular, it's also found in the knee joint and the cartilage of the knee as well. So age-related changes in collagen. So as I mentioned, collagen is part of connective tissue found in cartilage, ligaments, tendons, bones, as well as skin. Collagen fibers keep your skeletal system flexible, but collagen levels as we get older start to decline after about the age of 25. So any of us who are over the age of 25, we have got declining levels of collagen. And that's where it becomes really critical with a healthy lifestyle to maintain your collagen levels, and also to try and avoid activities that reduce your collagen production in your body. So smoking is a big one. So these declines can cause ligaments, tendons, and bones and cartilage to become less flexible and more brittle over time. So you can see there's a number of things going on, from your collagen to your synovial fluid to your cartilage to your bone, that affects joint health overall. So the importance of maintaining joint health comes down to maintaining and preserving your mobility. So not just what we used to call flexibility, but now we're starting to talk, or physiotherapists and physical therapists are now starting to talk about more preserving mobility, which is a combination of physical range of motion and flexibility. And that's essential for making sure that you maintain a healthy range of movement as you get older. It's obviously important for our independence and daily activities. And if you've got an elderly parent or relative, you know that their ability to maintain that independence can decline as they get older. And of course, it's also important for just overall well-being and enjoyment of life. Joint health contributes significantly to the physical activity, leading to better overall well-being and mental health. So the key joint health conditions. I mentioned before sarcopenia, but there is one of a triad of these conditions that we call that are associated with joint mobility. They are sarcopenia, osteoarthritis, and osteoporosis. So, several significant conditions that affect joint health. And in this section, I'm going to talk a little bit more about sarcopenia, osteoarthritis, and osteoporosis, focusing on the cause, symptoms, and also the impacts on your well-being. So sarcopenia is basically a loss of, or an age-related loss of muscle tissue. That will then result in a reduction in your body strength, contributing to falls and fractures. I mean, also muscle is where your body burns energy. So your energy levels start to decline as you get older if you're losing too much muscle mass. We also tend to find that we gain weight as we get older because muscle tissue is not there to help burn your body, your fat stores and your glucose stores. So you may still continue to eat the same foods, but you find that your body fat levels start to increase as your body muscle levels start to decrease. So common symptoms include decreased strength, reduced endurance, and difficulty in performing your daily activities. And the impact on your daily life, the loss of muscle strength can lead to an increased risk of falls and fractures, significantly impacting your quality of life. So just to go through this in a bit more detail, the medical definition of sarcopenia is the gradual loss of muscle strength and function over time as we get older. Commonly affects elderly population, and is thought to occur due to the aging process itself. It can greatly impact your quality of life by reducing your ability to perform your daily tasks. It can lead to a loss of your independence and a need for increase your risk for a need for long-term care. Ultimately, if it's not, if you don't try and regulate your loss of muscle mass, it can actually lead to, hospitalization as your need. And I can speak to this firsthand because my mother, God bless her, actually ended up in a nursing home, and she was 100% dependent on people to do everything for her, to change her clothes, to roll her over in bed. So and that's all because she just lost her ability to maintain her physical activity. Osteoarthritis is a degeneration more of the cartilage tissue itself. So it's the most common form of arthritis, characterized by the degeneration of cartilage tissue. It leads to pain and stiffness and reduced mobility, significantly affecting the quality of life. It's a condition that affects the whole joint, including the bone, the cartilage, the ligaments, and the muscles. And it's often described as wear and tear osteoarthritis. So basically, as we get older, we put it down to that wear and tear. And it's now to be thought of a result of the joint working extra hard to try and repair itself. Osteoarthritis may include inflammation of the tissue around the joint. It's damage to the cartilage itself. It reduces that protective cushion at the end of your bones, which allows your joint to move smoothly. This can result in the growth of what we call bony spurs growing around the edge of the joint, and that can increase the pain and inflammation associated with it. So it's like a never-ending circle of ongoing inflammation and pain and deterioration. It's also affected, basically any person over the age of 40 is at more increased risk of osteoarthritis, and as many as 1 in 5 adults over the age of 45 are believed to have osteoarthritis. So it's something that will certainly affect a lot of people. So this is a diagram showing you the destruction of the cartilage. You can see on the left-hand side here, we've got healthy bone tissue, healthy cartilage tissue, which is that white tissue at the ends of the bone. Over time, the bone starts to break down. The cartilage also starts to break down, and that is that cycle then of creating the bone spur, the inflammation, the thin cartilage, all resulting in osteoarthritis. Osteoporosis, the third of the three of the trifecta, is basically a degeneration of the bone tissue itself. So it's characterized by weak and brittle bones, leading to a higher rate or risk of bone fractures. The word osteoporosis, porosis means porous, so it literally means bones with holes within it, and that changes the density of the bone. It occurs when bones lose minerals such as calcium and magnesium more quickly than the body can replace them. Bones become less dense, they lose their strength, and they break more easily, and people don't realize they have osteoporosis often until it's too late when a fracture happens. However, having said that, you can see osteoporosis in some people as their spine starts to curve more, and you can see what we call a dowager's hump associated with some people who become a bit more pronounced in their leaning forward. The main thing is early intervention and diagnosis can help prevent unwanted fractures, but it all comes back to what you do when you're younger and your physical activity throughout your day and your nutrient intake and avoiding risk factors or known risk factors such as smoking, alcohol, excessive alcohol consumption, and a really highly refined, highly processed and high saturated fat intake. So let's change tack now and talk more about the nutrition and lifestyle intervention. So adopting a healthy lifestyle and proper nutrition can significantly reduce your impact to joint health. Sorry, significantly reduce the impact to joint health. What we'll do now is look at what you can do to help maintain the health of your joints and tissues. Number one is stay active to support joint and health. So inactivity leads to stiffness. The old use it or lose it principle of the human body is if you don't use it, your body will get rid of it. And that is significantly what happens when it comes to your muscle tissue and your bone tissue. Your joints rely on movement to stay healthy and nourished and lubricated. Keep active throughout your life. Every day, try and make sure you have regular bouts of physical activity. I didn't say exercise, but physical activity throughout the day. Keep moving. It's going to be a real challenge because if you're an office worker or a person who has a sedentary routine throughout your day, it becomes a real problem for us. But you've then got to make real conscious efforts to keep moving. So you can also then eat your way to healthy joints. So nutritional choices can help reduce inflammation, which is very important for preventing joint pain and discomfort. And of course, consider taking supplements for bone and joint health. Certain nutrients, and we'll talk about these with some of the Neolife products, can help support bone and cartilage health, which is vital for joint function and mobility as we get older. The role of diet in joint health. So, a couple of key principles here. Importance of a balanced diet. A diet rich in a variety of whole foods provides a wide range of essential nutrients that are critical for maintaining healthy joints. So one of the important things I always mention is to eat a wide variety of healthy foods. Don't, try and avoid limiting what you consume throughout the day. Good rule of thumb is to try and consume 30 different foods throughout the week. Some people take that to mean 30 different foods throughout the day, which is probably pushing it a little bit too hard. But if you can try and aim to have 30 different foods throughout the week, you're doing yourself a good favor in eating a well-balanced and wide variety diet. Reduce inflammation. So there are certain foods and nutrients within those foods that we know can actually stimulate inflammation or promote inflammation inside the body. So what you should be looking at trying to do is focus on eating plenty of fruits and vegetables, especially leafy green vegetables, and other complex carbohydrates. So, and avoiding refined sugars, refined carbohydrates. So anything that's been processed, try and eliminate, if not eliminate, minimize as much as you can those processed foods. So can even add it to bread these days. So be very much particular aware of where sugar is being added in the diet. And if you can avoid it, try and avoid adding sugar to your foods. But a little bit of sugar is okay if you have it in the form of a less refined source. Um, the foods that you should try and consume to or minimize consumption of are sources of saturated fat. So, uh, fatty meats, especially different types of meats, try and limit, reduce your risk, exposure to fatty meats. Um, Coconut oil, I know this is a little bit probably a bit of conjecture here, but from my perspective, reading the evidence, coconut oil is very high in saturated fats. Palm oil is also very high in saturated fats, and you need to try and do your best to minimize the intake of those foods. But the foods that you should be consuming are the omega-6 and omega-3s. We used to think omega-3s were the anti-inflammatory fatty acids, and they are. And we used to also think the omega-6s were the inflammatory ones. But we now know that there are certain omega-6s that are also anti-inflammatory in their actions. So it's a matter of trying to consume a wide variety of lean foods, and you'll get your balance of omega-6 and omega-3s. Omega-3s are a little bit harder because they tend to be found more in foods like your fatty fish, but also in your nuts and seeds, especially your flaxseed and chia seed. So if you're plant-based, you need to be focusing on those foods. And supporting cartilage health, certain nutrients, which we'll speak about in a bit more detail. So let's talk about physical activity because that's critically important. So regular physical activity plays a crucial role in maintaining joint health and mobility and maintaining your well-being. So tailored exercise routines can very much be very beneficial to a person, especially if you're not familiar with exercises. Weight-bearing exercise is the best exercise when it comes to trying to maintain your bone density in particular and your muscle mass. So walking is great, and I'm not even going to say don't walk, but walking is only part of the process. If that's all you do, you really need to try and do some weight-bearing activity if you can. Now, some people don't like gyms, and I get that, but gyms are a very good avenue to pursue. You can actually meet other people, and there's actually some very good positives with going to a gym. But if you don't like doing gym, find activities, gardening, pushing a lawnmower, things where you're actually pushing against the resistance. Even just doing some, you can get some bands or some kettlebells or something in the home, and just get some activities. Find a little program on the internet, and you can do those from the comfort of your own home. I won't say comfort of your own home because you're doing exercise. It's not really comfortable, right? But I guess at least you're not around a lot of other people that you don't know, and you probably don't want to be around. Mobility exercises. So like I said before, we used to talk about flexibility exercises or stretching. Well, now we're starting to talk more about mobility exercises where you're working through a range of motions. So it's sort of like stretching, but it's more of an active stretch that you're doing as opposed to just a static stretch where you're pushing against a wall and trying to stretch out a joint. Mobility exercises are moving side to side, even with your legs apart, or trying to bend forward and then back up again. They're more your mobility exercises as opposed to a static stretch, which is just basically a stretch. Static means not moving, so a stretch where you're not moving. So some preventative lifestyle strategies, maintaining a healthy weight is critical. So like I said earlier on, being underweight is not great, and neither is being overweight. You want to be in that healthy BMI range of between 18.5 to say 25. If you can do that throughout your lifespan, that will play a very important role in maintaining your joint health going forward. Avoiding smoke and not smoking, and managing stress. So effective stress management techniques that help promote better health throughout life. I don't know if you've got access to doing yoga or Tai Chi or Qigong, but any of those activities where they are beneficial because they help with your range of motion, but they also can be very good at managing your stress levels. So let's move now more specifically about and talk about the anti-inflammatory diet, foods and nutrients. So an anti-inflammatory diet can definitely be beneficial for joint health, We'll go through some of the concepts of an anti-inflammatory diet and look at some of the specific foods. So, again, just to recap here, we're focusing on whole foods. Anti-inflammatory diet emphasizes the importance of whole foods to improve overall health and reduce inflammation. And you'll see by this picture here, we're looking at lots of plant foods. They tend to be the most anti-inflammatory foods that you can find, combined with your omega-3 sources as well. Fruits and vegetables, very rich in fiber, also rich in antioxidants and other phytonutrients that have an anti-inflammatory role to play in the body, and incorporating or ensuring that you consume a good intake of healthy fats. So olive oil, avocados, fatty fish, if you like to eat fish, are very beneficial at helping reduce inflammation and promoting heart health. And like I said earlier on, try to minimize the intake of saturated fats. So the fats that you find in processed foods, cakes, biscuits, lollies, pastries, all those sort of foods, pies, meat pies in particular. Any fatty meat that you find, try and reduce and minimize your fatty meat intake. Go for quality over quantity. Go for quality over quantity in terms of even the amount of times throughout the week that you're consuming meat. Instead of having it every day or at every meal even, try and have it just once a day or once every couple of days have meat and go more plant-based where you can. Cruciferous vegetables are critically important. So green leafy vegetables in particular, if there's one thing you can do that's going to improve the quality of your diet, it is try and find ways to incorporate more green leafy vegetables into your diet. That is, your spinach, kale, broccoli, all those sort of foods that you can consume throughout the day. Have green smoothies if that's what you're liking. Otherwise, incorporate having salads with these foods in them as well. So what we know is that cruciferous vegetables are rich in antioxidants that help fight the free radicals and protect the cells from damage. That in a way also has an anti-inflammatory property. So again, we know that these compounds can reduce inflammation, not only just through the antioxidant action, but some of these compounds have an anti-inflammatory action of their own right. And they also support joint health. So regular consumption of these cruciferous vegetables, very, very important for your ongoing maintenance of your joint health and well-being. Carotenoids and flavonoids. So these are the colored pigments that you find in the diet. So carotenoids, as we know, I think we know, are the lipid soluble pigments found in fruits and vegetables, known for the antioxidant properties, whereas the flavonoids, they are the team. So it's like an orchestra where you have different sections of the orchestra and they all have their roles to play. Flavonoids are the water-soluble group of phytonutrients found in various plants that also have antioxidant and anti-inflammatory roles to play. The main thing is, again, if you're eating a wide variety of these different types of foods, plenty of different fruits and vegetables, different colors, eat the rainbow, then you will get a good intake of these flavonoids. Now, if you have a particular aversion to eating, not eating enough fruits and vegetables, then supplementing your diet with products such as carotenoid complex and flavonoid complex will be very beneficial. But bear in mind, carotenoids, flavonoids, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, reduce oxidative stress, reduce inflammation, and reduce the risk of joint degeneration. Let's go into some of the more key nutrients. So omega-3 fatty acids and their role. So omega-3 fatty acids have these very strong anti-inflammatory properties that benefit overall health and well-being. Best sources of these foods include your fatty fish, but green leafy vegetables are also a very rich source of omega-3 fats. And a lot of people are surprised by this, but if you were to analyze in a lab the fat and protein and carbohydrate in a green leafy vegetable, you'll find that about 8% of the energy content of that green leafy vegetable is made up of fat, which sounds like a lot, but it's not that much really. But then when you look at the omega-3 content of that fat, it's actually quite high. So green leafy vegetables can also be a very beneficial source of omega-3 fats. So if you consume regular intake of green leafy vegetables, add in some flaxseed, ground chia seeds, you will get enough of the omega-3 fatty acids. But if you don't eat those foods and you're looking for, you like your animal foods, then your omega-3s will come from your fatty fish, such as your salmon, sardines, and the like. Right. Salmon oil plus. Now, this product is a very rich source of omega-3s. The key benefits, so when we're talking about omega-3s, we're talking about cardiovascular health, we're talking about brain function, but in particular for our topic tonight is healthy, flexible joints and eyes. It's the first supplement of its kind to assure a standardized amount of the 8 members of the omega-3 family involved in human nutrition. It's based on a pure and natural source of salmon oil, and it's also very low in contaminants. Now, eating fatty fish is great, but unfortunately, a lot of the fish that we consume in our food supply these days has been contaminated through basically industry and runoff into the oceans. We used to think of mercury as being a major risk factor, but now we're more concerned about organic pollutants, and also microplastics is becoming a major concern with contamination with fish as well. So uh, I'm to a point where I don't think eating fish is ideal. I think if you're going to if you're going to give up your fish and you want to maintain a good source of omega-3s, supplementation is probably a good way to go. It's also very bioavailable source, and we can see here that it has been shown to have an effect at reducing triglycerides, improving the omega-3 index, and yeah, it's actually a very, very convenient way of getting your omega-3 fatty acids. So each capsule of salmon oil plus contains 690 milligrams of the omega-3 fatty acids. You can see the breakdown here. Well, I don't know if you can see it or not, but I'll read it out for you. So DHA, I'll just say DHA, docosahexaenoic acid, 160 milligrams per capsule, and the EPA, eicosapentaenoic acid, 153 milligrams. So a very rich source, totaling of about 355 milligrams of total omega-3 marine triglycerides in a capsule. I mentioned before it's ultra pure, so it's a concentrated source. So we actually remove the contaminants, and they concentrate the desirable omega-3 fatty acids. Calcium and magnesium for bone strength. So the importance of calcium is rather obvious, I would suggest, obviously, because it's made up, it's one of the most voluminous minerals inside the bone tissue itself. So calcium is essential for bone density and overall bone health, help prevent conditions like osteoporosis. Magnesium works in synergy with calcium, and it supports the bone structure as well. So it's not just calcium, it's also magnesium. And often we talk about trying to get calcium and magnesium in around a 2-to-1 ratio. So for every, I think the RDI for calcium is at least a minimum of 800 milligrams of calcium a day, and it's about 400 milligrams of magnesium per day. So CalMag chelate is beneficial because it's been shown to help postpone and prevent the onset of osteoporosis, supports normal blood pressure, optimal nerve and muscle function, and PMS. So it's also a rich source of vitamin D3, and it's a form of vitamin D that is highly absorbable and bioavailable. And vitamin D3 has an important role to play because it also helps the absorption of calcium in the gastrointestinal tract. So you need to have this synergy of action here. And of course, when it comes to any mineral, amino acid chelation is still the gold standard for absorption and also reducing irritation to the gastrointestinal tract. So chelation is basically just means that the mineral has been joined to the amino acid, and the amino acid helps absorb it across the gastrointestinal tract lining. So you get better absorption of those minerals. CalMag chelate, you can see here, 100 milligrams of calcium. That's the elemental amount of calcium. So 100 milligrams of calcium per tablet. 333 international units of vitamin D and 50 milligrams of magnesium. And we can see the Neolife difference here is this proprietary double amino acid chelation, so critically important, whereby you've got calcium joined to two glycine amino acids to help with the absorption of the calcium across the gastrointestinal tract. And it also helps reduce the irritation to the gastrointestinal tract itself. All right, some herbs, and I'm going to talk about these particularly for important reasons. So, boswellia. Um, Boswellia is for inflammation. So it's also known as Indian frankincense. It's an herbal extract and it's a resinous extract from the Boswellia serrata tree. So resin is basically the gummy, waxy, thick, very thick syrupy. So if you score the bark of some trees, you'll get this exudate that comes out, which is very resinous material. That is what we're looking at for in terms of Boswellia extract. So this resin has been used traditionally in Ayurvedic practices to promote arthritis, or sorry, to improve, not to promote, to improve arthritic symptoms, reduce inflammation and pain, and relieve symptoms of respiratory and cardiovascular issues. White willow bark is scientifically known as Salix alba, and it is the bark of the young willow trees. It's been used again traditionally for use in pain relief and inflammation. I'll talk about these in a bit more detail in the next slide. The active component is what we call salicin, and you may have heard of salicylic acid, which is the active compound in aspirin. So it is actually a derivative of salicylic acid. So salicin is metabolized in the body to form salicylic acid, which has that anti-inflammatory property. So salicylic acid reduces the pain and inflammation in the body. And then there's glucosamine. So glucosamine is a natural compound that helps contribute to cartilage health and can alleviate pain and improve your movement. So the product of note here is called Full Motion. And in Full Motion, you'll see it contains a source of glucosamine hydrochloride, boswellia extract, white willow bark extract in the form of Salix alba, and zinc. So glucosamine, let's dig into glucosamine. It's 1,500 milligrams of glucosamine per daily dose. 1,500 milligrams is what a lot of the research has shown to be beneficial for joint mobility and joint health. So glucosamine is a compound that occurs naturally in the body. It's chemically classified as an amino sugar. It serves as a building block for a variety of functional molecules in your body, particularly in the cartilage tissue itself. One of its main roles is to support the healthy development of articular cartilage, a type of smooth white tissue that covers the ends of your bones where they meet to join the joints. So if you can do what you can do, whatever you can do to help maintain the articular cartilage, you will reduce your risk of osteoarthritis. And it's primarily recognized for its role in developing and maintaining the cartilage within your joints. So glucosamine hydrochloride is the form. The reason why glucosamine hydrochloride is so good is it's the glucosamine that you're looking for. So the actual content of glucosamine in the hydrochloride form is actually a lot higher than you find in other glucosamine forms, such as glucosamine sulfate. So that's why glucosamine hydrochloride is a preferred form. The herbal complex blend, as I mentioned, is made up of willow bark and boswellia. So let's just talk a little bit more about salicin and salicylic acid relationship. So just some background here. Traditionally, it was first used in the Egyptians, and the recorded history of use of willow bark was as far back as 1500 BC, where Egyptians recorded the use of willow trees for anti-inflammation actions and pain-relieving purposes. And then later, people from different regions gradually discovered other benefits with the willow bark. And with the advancement of chemistry, two of the active compounds were identified, which is salicylic acid and salicin. So salicin is what you find in the willow bark tree, and it's metabolized in the liver to form salicylic acid. And then, of course, when you take aspirin, they are actually a pharmaceutical grade of salicylic acid. So the relationship between salicin and salicylic acid, they shared a chemical foundation and a metabolic condition. Salicin is the natural compound, and it serves as a pro-drug, meaning that it metabolizes into its active form within the human body. And when ingested, salicin goes enzymatic conversion into salicylic acid, and that process, like I said, occurs inside the liver. And it really goes to show that a lot of these pharmaceutical compounds that we have in our drugs today have a natural source. So in essence, salicin can be considered a natural plant-derived source of salicylic acid, forming a direct biochemical link between the two. Now let's talk about boswellia and boswellic acids, which are the active components of boswellia. So I mentioned it's a gum resin, I should say, from the boswellia species tree. The boswellic acids possess a variety of what we call pharmacological effects, such as anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects. It's a gum resin extract, and it's been traditionally used again for centuries to treat chronic inflammatory diseases. It's the resinous material of the boswellia serrata tree that we're using, and it contains a number of different acids that have this anti-inflammatory action. And how they work is they inhibit the pro-inflammatory enzymes inside the body. So when you take a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, these can have significant adverse effects. With these boswellic acids, they actually minimize the adverse effects. So the Neolife difference is it's a fast-acting herbal product containing bromelain, white willow, and boswellia. It's a regenerative mineral complex, contains zinc, boron, and silica, and it has the 3D advantage of being good disintegration, dissolution, and dispersion once consumed. Right, that is, I'd like to conclude it there. The importance of joint health, just to recap. So understanding joint health is crucial for effective prevention and intervention strategies that enhance the quality of life as we get older. Healthy lifestyle activities, regular physical activity, healthy diet, good nutrition, supplementing your diet can improve your joint health and maintain your quality of life as we get older. So I'd like to leave it there. Thank you very much for your time. I'll send these notes through to the team, and feel free for them to share, and you feel free for you to request it, and you can get access to this slide. So thank you very much for your time, everyone.